Hi everybody, welcome to Kaiju and Coffee presents Geeksploitation. I'm Travis, this is Scott. We're going to be talking about video game films. And we're going to start way back where it started in 93 with Super Mario Brothers. It stars Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo and Dennis Hopper, of course, because it was the 90s. You had to have Dennis Hopper or Gary Oldman, one or the other. But anyways, yeah, full disclosure, I had never seen this before until I watched it for this review, and I had obviously heard, it wasn't going in cold. I had heard about it. I knew it was a really, really, really loose adaptation because it's just this little guy and he's jumping on shit, but yeah, they definitely ran with it. You saw it, right? But back when?
Yeah, I saw it in theater when it was originally out. That was as a child, and hey, it was Super Mario. That's all it had to be to get us in the theater.
Did you come out thinking the same thing?
No.
I probably would have been like, okay, that's Super Mario Brothers, because that's like, it's what it says. It's what it says on the tin, and so that's what I would have thought. But I understand you were probably a little smarter than me. You realized it was shit at the time.
Well, even in general, that was 93. By that point in time, there had already been several cartoon series, even the live-action Lou Albano stuff, and several games that had kind of already built a story.
Right.
So they took a lot of liberties with it, like you said, and for being the first of its kind, you have to respect that, but ultimately, it just kind of failed.
Yeah, it did. This is one of those films where it's got a lot of stories that come with it if you look into that type of stuff. Like, oh, such and such didn't get along with such and such. Everybody hated such and such. The production was a nightmare. And this is one of those ones where it carries that baggage with it. Pretty much from what I hear, like, there was quite a bit of drinking on set as well. It didn't come through. I mean, I just watched it as a straightforward film, and the editor wasn't drunk. They knew what they were doing, and it was a pretty straightforward story for the most part. Though I know it started out edgy, and then they wanted to make it a kids film, and then they're like, no, make it edgy again, and that comes through. The tone is all kinds of fucked up. Like,
well, again, that was the 90s. Everything had to be edgy. Everything had to, the MTV smash cuts, and basically the beginning of the ADD generation. Bright, fast colors mixed with the darkness, and
yeah.
it was. No one knew what they were doing. Memory serves, the directing team was still new. I believe that was their first film.
Husband and wife.
Yeah, that was their first film. So, you make a lot of mistakes in the beginning, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things if you pop in a film from 93, you're going to see, it's like kind of a time capsule of culture and film. You got to see old school shots of New York. And then apparently you went to another dimension where it's Blade Runner.
Clearly, because that's what all other dimensions are.
Yeah. I like I said, you got to give them credit. They took Mario Brothers and tried to make Blade Runner out of that. Like, okay. I saw Alan Silvestri did the soundtrack. He's done scores that I like. It's really a mixed bag. The film certainly is a mixed bag. That's right. The special effects, because it was that time, they were really bad, and they were using them for things that they shouldn't have. But meanwhile, this is the type of film where you can see really bad, like, rippling effects and all that, but then have, like, this obviously super expensive puppet. The Yoshi puppet was insane.
Oh, yeah.
That could have been in a film now. It looked really real. The money definitely made it on screen for Yoshi. I was impressed. He kind of got a rough ride, though. Like, he was getting kicked and stabbed. I was like, geez, man.
Yeah, it was, again, also for that time period, a very violent film, much more so than the games, the more whimsical violence, if you will.
Yeah.
But that was also, going through a lot of that. It was the time period. It was the transition between practical effects and the more, the newer CG. Things like Jurassic Park. Being obviously the pinnacle of that time period, and then we'll just throw something from a computer on there, save some money. Yeah, because you can. So
it's like a little kid getting a toy.
Yeah.
They want to do things they probably shouldn't do with it. They want to use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But
that could still be said now. Everything's green screen at this point.
Yeah, that's true. Like I really appreciate when I actually see something on a screen now.
Practical effects are a dying art, unfortunately.
Horror's still keeping alive. There's plenty of fake blood to go around.
No.
But yeah, as for the mixed tone and the pulling in different directions from a lot of the different hands and the studio and the directors and the producers, there's smoking in this.
Yeah. A
kids film,
Well, this was pre 2000 smoking ban, where a cigarette made something immediately rated R.
Right. And then that person had to die.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did notice the smoking. That was, you just notice stuff like that. If you see smoking in a hospital or smoking on a plane in a film, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. This must have taken place 1,000,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can remember that, in restaurants and stuff. But I gotta ask, what was with the dancing? Do you remember that? There was a lot of dancing of well, we didn't even mention the Goombas yet.
Yeah.
What was with the Goombas? The big bodies and the little heads?
No idea.
Yeah, they just ran with that. They really did run with that. But then they kept dancing, and I was just like, what?
I think ultimately maybe the dancing was an attempt to kind of match how the characters moved in the game, maybe. But I think making them look like that was also an attempt to go with the dinosaur theme that they were trying to go with. How everything was a dinosaur, and
it was just silly. Like, I think they were just pandering. Like, oh wait, it's a kids film today. So
the constant visual reminders that, oh yeah, by the way, this is a kids film. We've got to throw something kids in it.
Yeah, but Luigi wore a red sweatshirt for most of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of expected it to be like a Power Rangers thing where they wear their colors, but they didn't do that till the very end, just to justify and put it on the poster, I guess.
Well, even at that, I think also with that, it's at that point in time there had only been so many games. There wasn't the long lineage of the characters that there are now. The pantheon of the Super Mario Brother world. Back then it was really just them and Yoshi and Peach and Bowser. And that's who got into the movie.
Well, I gotta hand it to Bob Hoskins. He was a professional. Even if he was drunk half the time, he did his job. Leguizamo did fine, and I'll watch Hopper and anything too. But yeah, so I mean, I guess that's it for Mario, unless you got anything else to add. No? All right. Well, that is Super Mario Brothers, which brings us to the next one, Double Dragon. This was another one that I hadn't seen until we decided to start this series, and I've got some catching up to do on a lot of these, and Double Dragon was one of them. And this one, I guess for me even more so, it was really like a time machine from that period, because I really got into martial arts through film, and so during the 90s, as you recall, like family-friendly martial arts was hitting its pace.
Well, yeah,
like Ninja Turtles really pretty much started it.
The Three Ninjas and and things like that. Yeah,
I mean, you could pretty much distill this film down into its separate parts, and it's basically one part RoboCop, one part Warriors, one part Blade Runner, Home Alone, Three Ninjas, and they just blended it up and made Double Dragon out of it. It's got Mark Damascus. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'd seen him in a Capoeiro film called Only the Strong, and he was in a Jet Li film in the 2000s, so I knew him. Robert Patrick's in it, which I have to say, every time I see him, I realize all over again, it's like, oh, Robert Patrick's done other things than Terminator 2. Who knew?
Yeah, right.
I didn't know that. But yeah, a lot of recognizable faces for me was in it. The henchman from Lethal Weapon and Die Hard was in it. I think the lady from Sidekicks was in it, which I consider Chuck Norris's answer to, what's it called? Last Action Hero. That's Chuck Norris's version of that. And
even the star, wasn't that kid guy, what's Scott Wolf, I think his name is, something like that. He was from like Party of Five or something like that, which was really, really big on television at the time.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't have known that, but yeah, I do remember the name. It was real big, certainly at that time.
At the time, he was really kind of the get of the movie.
No, the get of the movie was the guy from The Hills Have Eyes and The Devil's Rejects, who was in it for like 2 minutes.
Sure.
And then, the T-1000 killed him. But yeah, holy shit. Is the game dystopian?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of in a... it's definitely kind of in a Mad Max kind of world, but maybe much more so the first Mad Max.
Got it.
Where there's still society, but for some reason everyone still has like bondage gear on.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I might have played Double Dragon at some point. If I do, I don't remember it. The most I know about it is from Anita Sarkeesian talking about it a couple years back. That's all I got from it. But this one, it's also like Mario. It's from that time period where they were like, let's use these special effects for things that we probably shouldn't. The Robert Patrick effect, it might not even have been special effects, but I think it probably was. You know the one I'm talking about? When you use the dragon piece or whatever?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And turn into like a ghost, a scary ghost. I don't know. I really like dystopian films. I do. I like them. The bleak future. It makes now look nicer. But I was a little surprised to see a dystopian children's film because Double Dragon of all these earlier ones, it's like it's the kiddie one. It's very much the kiddie.
Oh yeah, the bright colors and everything.
Yeah. The kids, the rollerblading, and they got all the colors.
It's so 90s. It is a time capsule of the time period.
Yeah, just with the editing, the music, the reaction shot that they really love to do, where they would be like, ah! They did that like 5 times or something.
Yeah, every trope in the book.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, this is why we're not in the 90s anymore. This is why we progress. This is good stuff. Andy Dick was in it.
Well, there you go.
Holy shit, I just remembered that. He was the smog caster, like the weatherman. That was weird. That kind of reminded me of like Motorhead dude in Hardware. Kind of his little cameos. What that reminded me of. But parts of Double Dragon were filmed here in Ohio. We're in Ohio, by the way, not far from Cleveland, and they filmed the Los Angeles River, which is an actual river now in the future. They filmed that in the Cuyahoga River, and you can see bits of the Cleveland skyline, like Fenn Tower and the baseball stadium in the background. That's why they thank Cleveland and the Indians at the end. But yeah, I kind of liked a lot of the tech that they were using. They would like have the sun visor flip down and have a little computer. As a kid, I was like, there should be a computer up there. And, thankfully in the future of Double Dragon, there is. I'm really glad about that. Did you see...
Well, yeah, because that's a safer place than in your hand.
Yeah. Did you see Double Dragon back in the day?
I did not.
You didn't? Okay.
It's the only one of these films so far that I did not see it in the theater, but I did see it. It came in if memory serves, they came in the very 90s, like, orange VHS cassette.
Yeah.
I'm relatively
It's
certain.
like a Nickelodeon tape.
Yeah.
All right.
So that, again, it was very early 90s, very Nickelodeon, very, bright colors will get these kids to sit in seats.
Right.
At least with this one, they didn't really pander to, like, the parents to get them to sit too. It was very clear as to what it was. It probably had a very small budget, but, back then you could buy video game IPs for practically nothing, and so they did.
Yeah.
And, turning a beat-em-up game into a film, beat-em-up game that really has not a whole lot of story to begin with, isn't really that hard, so...
Yeah, it's pretty formulaic. I mean, as you would expect.
Yeah.
From this type of thing.
But at least, unlike Super Mario Brothers, that formula really already existed. They could just wrap the IP around it.
Yeah.
Super Mario, they were trying to do something totally different to a franchise that has almost no real overlaying story aside from save the princess.
Well, at least in Double Dragon, the female character didn't get saved. She helped. She helped them out.
There we go.
The big bad. Do you remember the suit? The big bad, the guy, he got all big and scary and ugly. Like, do you remember that?
Yeah.
It kind of dragged a little bit. It looked super uncomfortable.
Oh, I can imagine.
Holy shit! No Goro was that. I'm certain.
In an attempt to cash in on the super shredder that was in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's definitely.
In addition to, let's be realistic, all these were to sell toys.
Did Double Dragon have toys? Oh, the video games are toy. Duh. Got it. Yep.
That and they did also have a toy franchise, although that might have been more skewed towards the animated series, which came out, right at, like, I believe right after this movie.
Oh, we better do that too, or we'll get in trouble.
Oh yeah, well, it is the internet.
There were Shuko Krispies.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Shuko Krispies clearly. The T-1000's character was Goga Shuko, something like that.
No.
Koga Shuko. And he had his, just the Rice Krispie box, take the name over it, Shoga Krispies. I couldn't believe it, but I'm fine with that. Like, if you're going to do product placement, do it funny. Do something funny with it.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, I mean, that's really Double Dragon in a nutshell. Product placement, the film. I mean, it's not as bad as like a Michael Bay type thing, but like we're talking about, it's a video game, so.
Yeah, in and of itself is product placement for the game.
Yeah, but yeah, Mark Damascus, if I'm saying that right, he acquitted himself well. He's a talented martial artist, and he can portray that on screen pretty well. And so yeah, I mean that's Double Dragon, which brings us to Street Fighter.
Let's talk about some martial arts.
Let's talk about Street Fighter. This was a big deal to me because let's just get out of the way. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Raul Julia. You got your Addams Family. And I was super into martial arts, as I mentioned, and my favorite martial arts actor was Jean-Claude Van Damme. Mm-hmm. And so for him to get casted as, a recognizable character from a pretty, big, one of the two big fighting games, that was a pretty big deal to me. And so just like, I just was like, okay, it's good. It's great. Whatever. It's fine. It's got Jean-Claude Van Damme on it, and it says Street Fighter. It's fucking great.
Yeah.
And so really that's all I felt about it for a long time, and then come to find out, all these years later, it actually kind of sucks a little bit.
Oh, you should have played the video game that was based on the movie. It was terrible.
I've seen images of it, and it hurt my eyes. It's really bad. It's a video game, but characters from the film that's based on another video game, and the characters, you know, they're just flailing around and doing shit.
Of course.
But yeah, you know what? I'll probably have to get that one day just so I can be Jean-Claude Van Damme and kick somebody's ass.
No,
I have to.
No, we're the.
I'll just beat up the second player and it'll be nobody, and so I can win. But so yeah, you had Jean-Claude Van Damme as Colonel Guile. You had Raul Julia, Shakespearean actor, as M. Bison, and that is unfortunately, as we know now, it was his last film. The film was dedicated to him, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. I remember when it happened.
Yeah.
It was a big announcement before the movie even came out.
Yeah, it's one of those. I should ask, did you see this one in the theater?
Yes.
Oh, lucky. I would have loved to have seen it in the theater. What did you think of it in the theater as a young Scot?
At the time, I loved
Yeah.
Street Fighter was my, one of my favorite games. I loved all the characters. I loved seeing all of the characters. Even though I've seen a lot of cosplayers do better jobs with the costumes than that production department did.
I can imagine.
They were pretty terrible, although they were spot on for the, for the characters in the games, but they were not good.
Yeah.
The story didn't really make a whole lot of sense at all.
Yeah.
And they did really shoehorn every character they could think of and try to give everyone backstories and try to, everything all at the same time, and was just a mess. Jean-Claude Van Damme kicked a lot of stuff, though, so as a kid I was like, yay.
Right. I didn't have... I came really late my family came really late to the video game world, but that's just the way it is. But I played Street Fighter at other people's houses, and it left a pretty indelible mark. It's a very, visually appealing game. I think a big selling point was the diversity of the characters, because the Mortal Kombat ones, they were like real people dressed up. And so those were all just a bunch of people, but Street Fighter, these were like anime characters. You got monsters and wrestlers and women and men, and they're from all over the place. And so that was a big thing of the game. And then so I think that became the goal of the film. Like, let's just get all these characters together. Who cares what it's about? Who cares that the budget sucks, that there's no plot really at all, there's barely any special effects, the props, a lot of them look like shit. Let's just get Dialsim and Blanca and Ryu and Ken. It doesn't matter. A lot of these people couldn't do martial arts, and the edits, they try to hide it, but the edits really, if you know what to look for, you can see that they can't fight. They can't stage fight. They've never done martial arts before, and really, some of them couldn't really even act that well either, but,
Most of them.
But
much like how very few people that were in that film are even acting at all anymore, period.
Yeah, I remember the one guy Ken was in Under Siege, I remember that.
Yeah.
Sagat was in some stuff, whatever.
Well, Ming Na's in tons of stuff, but that's one of the few, actresses that actually escaped that movie.
Who did?
Ming Na Wen.
Oh, is that Chun-Li?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
She's currently, was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and...
Okay. Yeah, she did survive that.
Mulan and tons of stuff.
Right.
She's been in a lot of stuff. Kylie Minogue?
I was just about to say, Kylie Minogue was Cammy, because...
And then went right into Biodome and was like, nope, I'm done. I'm good with that.
She can choreograph, so she can fight, and it just didn't look great. But I felt the casting for Guile and M. Bison was spot on, just because I'm such a big fan of the actors.
Yeah.
And probably the majority of the budget went to those two as well.
Clearly.
Because, you're not paying a lot for these other actors.
Yeah.
The sets were serviceable for most of the part, I think.
I also believe, right around that time, there was also, an anime, and, over in Japan, they had like sort of started releasing a lot more story behind just the game.
Right.
And I believe ultimately that's where this kind of failed story attempt might have come from.
Okay. Yeah, I believe it's a co-production, USA, Japan.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that had to do with it, and there was veiled story behind the games anyway. But yeah, I think ultimately at that point in time it didn't matter. It was just getting those two together, and however you got those two together in silly costumes. That's what all that was important, and you were going to get kids in the seats. As long as no one swore too much.
Right.
Of
the four that we're going to talk about, the four early ones, I think Street Fighter, for whatever reason, it abuses special effects the least of them all. Yeah. There's very few, because they knew we don't have a lot of money. We're not going to make ourselves look stupid.
Yeah. Also, and I think with the show... with the original source material, at its core, it really was a martial arts film. Because that's what most of these characters... there are Hadoukens and stuff like that, but really, at the time, were really only a few characters that could do things like that.
Right.
Now in the games, it's completely different.
Is it? Okay.
But at the time, it was much more of a martial arts where, like, let's say... Mortal Kombat, which we'll get to here in a minute, a lot of that was just much more about brutality and special, abilities and things like that, as opposed to just, martial arts and actual fighting.
Well, I said the casting was perfect for those two, and, for the most part, I'll stick by that, but, I think at this point, there's one aspect, like Jean-Claude Van Damme is playing an American with an American flag tattoo,
yeah.
But he's not American.
No.
Because I think they figured out pretty quick, or immediately, they're like, don't ask him to do accents, because he can't.
Yeah.
He can't. He just can't.
Even speak English all that good.
Yeah.
But you know what? Universal Soldier was the shit, so let's just keep this train rolling.
Yeah, because they were like, we'll just make him like French Louisianan and it'll work there. Yeah. We could do an episode on that. We'll just pretend it's based on a video game. But yeah, I still loved him in it. I loved Raul Julia in it. He's losing his shit, just bug-eyed the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's probably in really bad shape, too. So you got to think that's quite a feat for him. And there's a couple lines that he has that, despite how corny and lame the film is overall, I think the lines are pretty cool. Like in the beginning when they're setting up the credits are still rolling. He has those captured soldiers. He's going to kill with his bare hands.
Yeah.
And he says, you've come from around the world to fight me, soldier. Now's your chance. And I was just like, oh, shit, that's so cool. But there's another line, too, that's been made a meme now with the scene with Chun-Li, with the rack with all the hats. Mm-hmm. That's all I think about in that scene is the rack with all the hats on it. But he tells her that he doesn't remember killing her father. Mm-hmm. And he's like, the day that M. Bison stormed your village and killed your father was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was just Tuesday. Or no, it was Tuesday. And that is such a good line. I wonder, did they scrape up enough money for a rewrite from Quentin Tarantino for one line? And that's the one he did. Because it's so good. It's a meme now. People love it. It was Tuesday.
I like to believe in my heart that was ad-libbed.
He ad-libbed it, yeah. That'd be pretty good.
Well, even that was his portrayal was a drastic change from the actual character in the game and at that point in the series. Because in that aspect of the IP, he was much more of a cold, calculated, dictator who just crushed people, as opposed to piffy one-liners. But that being said, Raul Julia made the character more watchable.
Oh, hell yeah.
Had it just been Jean-Claude versus a more accurate representation of this character, the film really would have been unwatchable.
Yeah. You got anything else you want to say about Street Fighter?
Not really. I think we're covered most of it. I mean, I know we spoke earlier about believing that if any of these films got a further adaptation, another remake or something like that, that would probably be the first on the list. But I'm not really sure about that.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I think I based that on like the games are still coming out, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, and they're never gonna stop. So I mean, somebody's gonna have some money and be like, we're out of ideas. How long's it been since that failed Street Fighter attempt? Okay, let's try it again.
Yeah. Actually, I think that one might have actually done well domestically. We'd have to look at the actual budgets and how much any of them made, but I remember that one actually being relatively popular and not like being a bomb.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the kids got out to it,
Yeah.
and the rental, like they certainly got a rental from me, at least one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so maybe they will. I don't know. But yeah, that is going to bring us to the last of the big four, of the first big four we're going to talk about today. And you guessed it, it is Mortal Kombat. It's hard. What can you say about this one? Like,
It's dark and campy.
did you see it in the theater?
Yes.
Okay. Aside from Jurassic Park, I would say this is the first film I really remember there being a lot of hype for. I mentioned that I was hyped for Street Fighter because I was, but I remember there was a lot of buzz around Mortal Kombat. I still remember the promotional images, and one of the first ones was Scorpion and Sub-Zero coming through the door. And so it was just like, okay, we got to see that. Like, that's all there is to it. We're going to have to see that.
No, I remember the soundtrack and the constant looping of that like dance remix version of the theme that was just would burrow into your skull and never let go.
Well,
And that being in the original commercials, and it's just yeah. It was brutal.
well, I was going to say that, I don't think this film, it came and went, and it left a pretty big impact for a while.
Yeah.
But what really people are going to remember, I have to assume, is the song.
Yeah. Well.
Like, right? Like, I have to think that, I've heard it many a time since then.
It made a lasting impression.
I've heard the song more than I've seen the film, I think. I do believe so. But, so yeah, 95, I believe, video games hit that stumbling block with the first couple with Mario and Double Dragon. Street Fighter did whatever it did, but Mortal Kombat, it had that hype, and I think in a lot of people's eyes, it probably delivered.
Yeah,
I got the impression.
Yeah, if memory serves, it was not a flop. It actually made money.
Yeah,
enough to justify a sequel. What, 2 years later?
it was pretty quick.
Yeah,
It was really quick.
However, the sequel did not get the same shine and polish that the original did.
Well, I know which episode I'm looking forward to now, the Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat Annihilation episode, but we got to get into this one first. What were your first impressions about it when you saw it? I'm assuming you saw it in the theater?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was dark. It was campy. I believe around that same time was the Batman Forever. And,
It was the same year, I believe.
yeah. So that, I think it took a lot from that. And the popularity of those kinds of movies, because that was the environment at the time.
Yeah.
But it was still dark, but only visually, really. The characters were still, fun and, with one-liners and stuff like that, which definitely wasn't really in the source material. That was really just much more about brutality. So
Right.
Than anything, but they managed to really kind of take something that didn't have much of a real story and turn it into something kid-friendly.
Right.
And they did all right job. It wasn't terrible. Looking back on it, yes, it is very dated, and special effects are terrible. Except for the practical. The practical effects were pretty decent.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
Um,
Definitely.
but just in general, having Christopher Lambert from Highlander, I think ultimately that's probably what drove me to see it at the time.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I still love those movies.
Yeah, I remember an adult saying, "Well, that was great casting. You have an immortal playing Raiden." And,
Yeah.
it didn't make sense to me at the time, but then I saw Highlander.
Yeah.
Got it.
Which I had already seen many, many times.
Oh, yeah?
But, I think at that point in time, all three of them, I think the third one had come out by that point.
I was pretty
And the
late.
series, and the TV series.
Yeah, I was pretty late to it. I just never caught it on TBS when it came on. Yeah, I guess, we were never going to get an R-rated Mortal Kombat.
No.
That would not.
Not like something now. But,
Yeah.
well, yeah, even at that, I don't think they would ever go with a hard R or anything like that now. I mean,
Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
You've got to get as many people in seats as you can.
Yeah,
especially nowadays.
That's never. Yeah, I was gonna say that's true now, and it was true then.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty edgy. Not a lot of blood. I think I was looking for blood, and the only blood you see is like from their mouths a little bit.
Yeah.
And she shoots a guy in the beginning, and he's just got a little blood in his mouth.
Well, clearly.
With a shotgun. He's just open fire in a club. Nobody cares. They're all still dancing.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just part of the DJ soundtrack.
Yeah, Sonya Blade didn't give a fuck. She was hitting people with that shotgun in the club. They're just trying to dance, rolling probably, and somebody hits them in the head with a shotgun. She puts the gun right up under Johnny Cage's neck, and he's just like, holy shit. And, that's the lady, as I mentioned earlier, from Billy Madison.
I think this might have been her next role after Billy Madison.
It would have been the next one that I saw. Those would have been back to back, certainly. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's Christopher Lambert, by the way.
Sure.
But yeah, I really liked him as Raiden too. On the same level as like Jean-Claude and Raul Julia in Street Fighter. I thought he's perfect as Raiden. And the guy that plays Shang Tsung, he was really good too. I loved him. He's like, "It has begun." I love that dude. I think I don't know. I remember seeing him in The Phantom, which nobody ever saw, but he was.
I saw that.
You saw that, yeah, of course you did. It was pretty much the same character, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, holy shit, Mortal Kombat. Oh, you know what? I didn't mention matte paintings. Mario had some matte paintings. Anybody that has matte paintings, I'm gonna like. So Mario had some matte paintings I liked. Double Dragon had some matte paintings that I liked. Street Fighter, I didn't spot any, but they might have used them. I just might not have spotted them because really that was kind of just a tight set-based film. There was a few locations, but it was very set-based.
Yeah.
And Mortal Kombat 2 had a few matte paintings as well that I liked. There was a lot of CGI mixing and stuff, and you see with the wide pan out, then you come up to somebody in a little window and tough stuff like that. It's pretty ambitious for the time, like all these other films we mentioned. It doesn't always pan out. Reptile, oh my god, looked terrible. The little reptile creature.
Yeah.
He looked awful. I think even back then, it just didn't quite hold up, even in your little child mind, But what else were they going to do? They don't have time to, or they didn't have the Mario budget for the little puppet.
Yeah, I would say ultimately, out of all four of the movies, the Mario Brothers had the highest budget, but...
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to look it up. I'd assume either the Double Dragon or Street Fighter would have the lowest.
Yeah.
But they're competing for the lowest budget. But yeah, Mortal Kombat. The martial arts looked okay for the most part because Liu Kang's Robin Shu or Shao, I might not be pronouncing that right, but he's fairly talented. And Johnny Cage, he can do some stuff too. Whoever played him, that was unless it was the stuntman doing the splits. But what interested me was the ninjas, the Sub-Zero, the Scorpion, and Reptile, because I think a lot of people at that point Sub-Zero and Scorpion, they've always been like neck and neck for probably one of the two favorites.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. They were, especially them at that time.
Yeah.
They were the draw. They were, how are we going to work these characters into it?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned, like, I remember them coming through the door in the beginning of the promotional material and it looked all cool. But really, they kind of got fucked in the film. Like,
yeah,
he even calls them slaves. Like, they're just slaves. And the martial arts that they do is interesting, too. I think, like, they come... The talent of the stuntmen kind of comes through a little better for like Reptile, and then Scorpion, and then Sub-Zero. He doesn't look so good in his, like, maybe he was like the least talented, or it could be the editing. I know he had the most screen time. That's probably why his fight's the shortest, or as far as the elimination fights, where it's to the death. Because his is really like kind of, they're just back and forth, done, does the thing, gets the thing.
Yeah. It could also very well be that all of his movesets would require way more CG.
Right.
So that's probably why he got backed up on.
Right.
Which is possible. I'm not sure.
Well, he got to freeze a nameless, shirtless, oiled up guy.
Oh, well.
In that one scene. There was a ton of shirtless, buff, oiled up guys in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had one fight scene with said buff, oiled up dudes, and then that was it. They only had to pay those guys for like 2 days of shooting, I guess.
Oh, I can only imagine how much that costs.
They were pretty much one and done. But so yeah, we talked about Reptile. Some of the special effects really just didn't hold up too well, even for the time. But we were kids. Well, let's talk about what really worked. Was the Goro suit.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
That was impressive. That Goro suit. It looked a little stiff in some shots, but he's a stiff dude. He's got 4 arms. He's big and tall. Like, he's gonna be pretty stiff. He looked fantastic. He looked amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I was really impressed with that. Even watching it now, it's really cool to see that.
Oh yeah, the practical. I can only imagine how long it took to get in and out of that thing. But yeah,
it could have been a puppet. It just had a dude in the legs.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not really 100%.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But
prosthetics and all that biz. Yeah.
It gets down on its knees at one point. You don't see all the movements, but
yeah.
it's pretty cool. I really like that suit.
Yeah.
There were some really good locations as well. The fights on the beach looked really good, and that was a really cool location. I don't know where that was.
The
when they roll up and they're walking. Yeah, all the
Bali or something. I think it might have been.
It
Bali.
looked nice.
But well, yeah. Just in general, the cinematography of that film was fantastic. Just in general, I'd say definitely the best out of the 4.
Yeah. Well, this is we didn't mention the director. This is the only director of the 4 worth mentioning. It's Paul W.S. Anderson. We'll get to more of his work in the Resident Evil slog. But he does show off, or his cinematographer does show off some pretty good cinematography. He favors. There's a couple shots that open into really wide, expansive movement with a lot of extras. They do that in the hall scene right before they freeze the guy with Sub-Zero, and at the Shaolin monk location. It looks great. Liu Kang gets off the boat. It follows him all in one shot, walking him up the stairs. All these monuments and these dudes, and it just looked really good.
Oh yeah, well, and that was also done at a time where shots like that weren't, really prevalent.
Yeah.
Just long single action movements. Would really become the rage, in the mid 2000s. But at the time, it was all that the MTV smash cuts.
Right.
It's the cut. How many times can we cut this film in the next
2
30
seconds?
Yeah. But especially for that time period, I think that really also just had lended itself to become much more watchable. Really.
Right.
Because they were at least kind of attempting to tell a story.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue that Mortal Kombat is not the best of the 4 that we talked about today. Like, I can't see that. I might lean a little more towards Street Fighter for my own personal reasons, but that's subjective. That's not objective.
Well, I think in general, especially with these 4 really early films in the genre, this is before they'd really nailed it down. They had tropes and they had normal stories to tell that they were trying to wrap the IPs around. The big break into these kinds of stories hadn't really happened.
Right.
It was until a few years later where they could tell these big overarching stories like they can now. So
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say it's the best one. It had the best setup because it's just a tournament film.
Yeah,
at its
yeah.
heart. So it's like you got 3 characters. You got to set up. You got Liu Kang. He
Yeah.
does his thing. You got Sonya. She does his thing. Johnny does his thing, and it's all set up really well. I think it has the best setup of them all.
yeah, it's Enter the Dragon, but with like ninjas who can throw ice.
Yeah. It has obvious sequel bait ending.
I think every single one of these movies had that.
Yeah, I think Double Dragon was the only one that wasn't overt about it. It certainly left it open, but
Yeah.
it just ended on one of the Home Alone shot.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones were very overt about it. Infamously, Mario has the one that didn't happen. She's we got more work to do, and Double Dragon does their kind of open-ended thing. Street Fighter has a post-credit scene where Bison punches through a screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it says rebooting world domination, and that never happened. And then Mortal Kombat has also very obvious sequel baiting where it's like, you weak pathetic fools, I'll cover your souls. And he's like, I don't think so, with one of the really good effects with the eye lightning. He's like, I don't think so. And then they all get in the pose, cue music.
Yeah. Of course, it was the only one to actually get a sequel, but
Yeah, it was. And like I said, I'm certainly looking forward to doing that one.
yeah.
Well, you got anything else to say about Mortal Kombat?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, then that is going to wrap up the first episode of Kaiju and Coffee Presents Geeksploitation with Travis and Scott. Thanks for joining us. Y'all have a good one.